So for this project, I'm going to be using the sugar and cream yarn in the color of jute. It is a 4 weighted yarn. I'm also using these wooden dowels that I bought from Hobby Lobby. I will put in the description what the measurements are of the ones that I bought, as well as the measurements of what I cut them down to. And I also stained them just to give them a better look with the baskets. What you'll need for this project is a crochet hook that is a 5.50 millimeter, as well as scissors, a sewing needle, some stitch markers. I use bobby pins, and some glue. Whatever glue you like. I do like using liquid stitch. I find it works really well. So to get started, do the magic loop. So I like to leave a longer tail because we will be sewing some of that in. So I start off, go over. There are better tutorials on how to do this. So now I'm going to chain 3. That third chain, you're going to only leave it a little looser so that you can get your hook through that when you need to. Now do 5 double crochet. So that first chain 3 counts as 1, so you should have 6 total. Now, get that all untangled. We're going to start on row 2. I'll pull that string a little, not too tight, a little. We're going to be sewing this in to make it more sturdy because we are going to be going through this hole when we're doing the back side. So to start on row 2, it is an increase round. So we are going to chain 2. So 1, you're going to be coming back and going into this first chain. So that's 1, 2. Like I said, bring your hook over and go back through that first chain. Yarn over and pull through. You have 2 loops on your hook. So now you're going to turn your work and you're going to go into that very first stitch. So hook in, yarn over, pull through. You have 3 loops. Now yarn over, go through 2 loops, yarn over, go through those 2. This will count as your first stitch. Now this gives a cleaner edge versus a chain 3, which kind of leaves a gap. So that's why we're doing it this way. Now, since this is a second row increase, we're going to be doing 2 stitches or 2 double crochet into each stitch. So this counted as your first. Now go back into that same stitch and do your second double crochet. 2 double crochet into each stitch to the very end. Now we're at that chain 3, and if you want to use stitch markers, do it, because that will help you remember where your last stitch was. So go into that first top chain stitch of the chain 3 and do your final increase. And so there we have row 2. Now to do the row 3 increase, we're going to chain our 2. We're going to be doing this on every row, our chain 2. going into that first chain, pull through, turn your work, going into that very first stitch. Pull through 2, pull through 2. So this counts as your 1. Now with a row 3 increase, it's going to be 1, and you're going to do 2 increases in the next stitch. So 2, 3. That makes up your 3. Now, the next stitch, 1. The stitch after that, 2, 3. 2 into that 1. One. Next stitch, 2, 3. And carry on to the end, and I will meet you back. Now, if you know how to do increase rows, we are increasing up to 9. So if you want to pause this video and continue on to increase row 9, go for it. If you aren't sure how to do that, carry on with me and we'll do it together up to row 9. So I will meet you at the back, or at the end of this row. Okay, so we're at the end and we have our final stitch. And if you're using stitch markers, great. If not, you'll see it. So do your final 2. There we have it. So now we're up for increase row 4. We're going to do our chain 2. Go in that first stitch, turn, first chain, sorry, turn, first stitch. Now you have 1, the next stitch, put your next double crochet. So you have 1, 2, now in the next stitch, 3, 4. There's your increase. Okay, 1, next stitch, 2, next stitch, 3, 4. There's your increase. You're going to do that all the way to the end, and I will meet you there. So we're back at the end, and I have my 1, 2, now my increase, 3, 4. Now for our 5th row increase, we do our chain 2, go into that first chain, turn, first stitch, and that counts as 1, as always. Then next stitch, 2, next stitch, 3, and here comes our increase, 4, 5. So again, next stitch, 1, next stitch, 2, next stitch, 3, next stitch, increase, 4, 5. So again, do that to the end of the row and I'll meet you. So we're at the end of the row. I have my 1, 2, 3, and now we're going for the increase, 4, 5. Now for our 6th row increase, chain 2, first chain go into, turn, first stitch. So 1, next chain, or next stitch, 2, next stitch, 3, next stitch, 4, Next stitch, our increase, 5, 6. Okay, next, 1, next stitch, 2, next stitch, 3, next stitch, 4, next stitch, our increase, 5, 6, into that same one. Okay, and just continue that to the end. Okay, we're at the end, so I have my 1, 2, 3, 4, last stitch, increase, 5, 6. Now for increase row 7, 1, 2, that first chain, turn, first stitch. Now we have 1, next stitch, 2, next stitch, 3, next stitch, 4, next stitch, 5. Here comes our increase, 6, 7 in that next stitch. So again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, our increase, 6, 7 into that same stitch. So continue on to the end and I'll meet you. So we're at the end, and so I have my 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and that next stitch, increase, 6, 7. Now, row 8, 1, 2, our first stitch, next stitch, 2, next stitch, 3, next stitch, 4, next stitch, 5, next stitch, 6, 6, and next stitch is our increase of 7, 8. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Next stitch is our increase, 7, 8. Continue to the end and I'll meet you. So we are at the end and I have my 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, increase in the last stitch, 7, 8. Now for our last increase row of 9, again, chain 2, flip, go in first stitch, 1, next stitch, 2, next stitch, 3, next stitch, 4, next stitch, 5, next stitch, 6, next stitch, 7, next stitch is our increase of 8 and 9. So again, next stitch 1, then 2, then 3, then 4, and 5, 6, 7, 7. Next stitch is our increase, 8 and 9. So finish that all the way to the end and I'll meet you. Okay, so we're at the end of this last increase row. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'm doing my last increase, 8, 9 into that last stitch. And we are done with the increase rows. So what we're going to do now is we're going to start working in the back, but first we're going to sew our tail in because we're going to be going through that center loop there. So we want a little more structure to keep it stable. So I'm just going to take this and go through the bottom parts of these double crochets. A little finicky here. Okay. I'm going to pull tight, but not too tight because you want to be able to get through that. So I'm going to do that one more time. And pull a little tight, but not too tight. So there we have that. Okay, so now that we have that sewed in, we're going to start on the back row here. What we're going to do is we're going to do our chain 2. We're going to go into that first chain and pulling up our loop. Now, here's the last double crochet, and we're going to be going into that top stitch of the last double crochet, only sideways. So 2 loops on the hook, go into that top stitch, pull up, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. So that's going to count as your first stitch going this way. So this is where you might really want to use a stitch marker, just so you know when we're coming back around, we're going to be joining into the top of this. And when we come back around, we won't be going into that first, last double crochet from the previous round like we went into for this. So you'll want to put a stitch marker into the stitch right next to that, so you know that when we come back around, this will be our last stitch and this will be where we join. So to continue on, we have our first stitch. Now we're going to go into that big space that is the double crochet from the previous round. Go into that. And then you'll see this big kind of gap. You're going to go into that big gap. And then you're going to see a space that isn't so big. We're going to want to go in here, but here's the thing. So you have the tiny little gap here, and then right next to it is another tiny gap, but they're both separated kind of by this small strand. So you're not going to go into that first little space. You're going to move that strand over and go into the next tiny space. I hope that makes sense. Okay, and then you'll see 2 big gaps also separated by a strand. You're going to go into both of those gaps. And then another big gap. You'll go through that gap. And then we are back to the 2 small gaps. separated by that strand. So again, you're going to go into the second small gap. Big gap, big gap, big gap. So you'll have 3 big gaps that you're going to go into. And then again, the 2 small gaps that are separated by the strand, going into that second small gap. And then 1, 2, 3 big gaps. Sorry about the noise of my bobby pins. And then again, the 2 small gaps, going through that second small gap. Okay, those are really noisy. And then you have a big gap, and you have the center hole that we sewed together or stitched in. You're going to go through that. So 1 gap, 2 gap, big center hole, okay. I'm going to kind of sew this string in as I go. I find it easier to do that way. So here you'll have the space that was a chain 3 for our first row. We're going to go through that. Then you'll have the top of that chain 3 that we had went through in this row. We're also going to go through that. Okay, then you'll have this big space to go through, this big space to go through. So 2 big spaces to go through. Go through those. And now we have the 2 small spaces. You can see separated by this strand. The strand is going to look a little different on the side because this was a reverse side. So you're going to go through the second half of that gap. And then you'll have big space, and then big space, and then another slightly big space, and then you'll be back to your 2 really small gaps. And again, you're going to go into that second part of the small gap. Big gap, big gap, and the 3rd big gap. And then the 2 small going into the second part of it. Big gap, big gap, big gap, and now here is where you have your 2 small gaps separated, and then you have the previous row's first double crochet stitch. We're going to be going through that, but first you have these 2 small gaps. I know we're used to going into the second part of it, but you're going to go into the first part of it on this one. And now you're going to turn a little bit and you're going to go into that top part of that stitch from this row, previous row. And now we're going to go in every stitch around, doing a double crochet, and I will meet you back to the stitch marker. Okay, so we are to the end. I'm going to remove that first stitch marker, go into the last stitch, and then we're going to join. So remove that stitch marker and slip stitch to join. You're going to want to pull that slip stitch a little tight here, and you can go ahead and use a stitch marker again just to know that this is your last stitch, because sometimes you might mistake that slip stitch as a stitch and we don't want to do that. So now do our chain 2, go into that second chain or first chain, and go into this stitch, the top of this previous stitch. So you want to go ahead and put your stitch marker into that if you want, if it helps you keep track a little better. So now we're going to do this 6 more rounds. So that will give you a total of 7 non-increase rounds. Now, I will meet you back after the 6th round here and show you where to go from there. Okay, so we are back. We have finished our rounds. We should have a total of 7 non-increase rounds. Now this is where we are going to start the next 2 rows that will be the gap rows. Now with this back row that we're getting ready to do, we will continue on as just a normal double crochet back row, and we're going to do 40 stitches. So as normal, we do our chain 2, going in that first stitch, that counts as stitch 1. Then we will continue on to 40 double crochets, and I will meet you at the end. Okay, so we've finished our 40 for the back. So now is where we're going to start our gaps. So you're going to chain 1, you're going to skip that next stitch, and you're going to double crochet into one after that. Chain 1, skip the next stitch, double crochet into the one after that. Chain 1, skip the next stitch, double crochet into the one after that. We're going to do that all the way to the end where we will join, and I will meet you there. Okay, so we are at the end now, and you should have a chain space left. So you'll chain 1, you'll skip that, and you'll join in that stitch there and hold tight. So now we're going to chain 3. 1, 2, that third chain, leave just a little bigger so that you can get your hook through there. So there's chain 3. That's going to count as our first stitch. Now chain 1 more. So you'll have a full total of 4 chains. Now yarn over, skip this next stitch, and go into the one after it. and do your double crochet. Now chain 1, skip that next stitch, go into the one afterwards, after that. Chain 1, skip, chain 1, skip, chain 1, skip. Go ahead and repeat that to the end of this double crochet row, and then I'll show you how to do in the gaps. Okay, we're at the end of that double crochet row here, so we're going to chain 1. You should have 1 stitch left of that double crochet round, and you're going to skip that. You're going to go into the space, this big gap here. You're going to do your double crochet, then chain 1, and then go into the next gap, chain 1, go into the next gap, chain 1, go into the next. And you're going to do this all the way around. And I'll meet you at the end to show you how to join. Okay, so we're back to the end now, to the beginning. So you should have 1 chain space left, 1 gap left. So you're going to chain 1, you're actually going to skip that, and you're going to go ahead and join into your 3rd chain. Slip stitch that. Now, that's the end of this. Okay, so this is where we cut. Go ahead and pull that kind of snug there. Okay, so you can either leave it like this, or you can do this single crochet just along the front here to kind of give it a little more definition. So if you want to do that, here's how we do it. So I have this marked, this post, just so I know. You're gonna go, this is a good way to make the measurement to know that you're in the right spots. So here you have your row of just double crochets, right? And then you have your posts of your gaps up here. So you're going to want to go that very first post, you're going to put your stick right through there, and you'll see that it matches up. Your stick is going to go in front of that post and should be lining up directly with the bottom double crochet. So you're going to go right in front of that 1 post. Now you're going to go behind 2 posts. Now you're going to go in front of 2 posts. Behind, in front, behind, in front, behind, in front, behind, and then that very last one, do just 1 post. So it should be even. And now here's where we're going to start the here's where we're going to start the single crochet. Is this post, you can see the top of the stitch. That's where you're going to go in to create your first single crochet. So it's that post right in front of the stick. And then 47 all the way to the top of this post that is in front, right where you left off, right where you cut off there. So go ahead and put your stitch marker right there, and then I will show you how I start and finish the single crochet row. So I'm going to do my slip knot here. Now take my stitch marker out. I'm going to go right into the top of that stitch. I'm going to yarn over and pull through 2 loops. Now you can sew in your little tail as you go if you want. So now we're going to go through that gap and do a single crochet. We're going to go into the top stitch of this post and do a single crochet. We're going to go into the gap, single crochet. Top stitch of this post, single crochet, gap, top stitch of that post. We're going to do this all the way to the end. Stop right before you get to this stitch marker and I will show you how I end it off. Okay, so we are now at the end and we're going to do the single crochet through the space, and then right here our final post was our chain 3 from the previous row. So take that stitch marker out and go ahead, and what you're going to want to do is put your hook through, pull it out, and we're not going to single crochet, we're going to slip stitch. Make a nice little loose stitch there, bring it through, and now we're going to cut off. And hold that tight a little bit as you pull snug this, just so it doesn't get funky looking. And that's it. So to put the wooden stick in, you'll see here where you started that single crochet right above this post. You can see it here. You're going to go in the post next to it. You're going to go in, skip, go right in front of that one, and then go behind the next 2. Go in front of the next 2, behind the next 2, in front of the next 2, behind, in front, behind, in front, behind, and you'll see right where you left off at this post, and you're going to go in front of just that one. I hope that makes sense, and I hope you could see it well, but that's the first basket. And now we will start on the second medium basket. Okay, so for the second basket, the medium basket, we're pretty much going to be doing the same thing, starting off with your magic loop and chaining 3, 1, 2, 3, and then doing 5 double crochets, then pull that slightly snug. And again, when you get done with these rows and you go to sew this in, you're going to do it the same way that we did the first basket. And so now you should have 6, because your first chain 3 counts as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So you're basically going to do 8 increase rows. So just like we did with the first basket, do everything the same, only you're going up to 8 increases. When we get done with that, I'll meet you back and show you how to do the rest. Okay, so we are done with our last increase round. We have 8 rows, I should say. So now we're going to start on the back, and I've already looped this through twice. So just like the first basket, we're doing 2 chains going into it, and this last stitch we're going to the top of that, only by the side of it. That's your first stitch, and then you'll carry on just as we did with the first basket. So you have going through that next stitch, which was the double crochet, then the third big gap, and then you have your two small ones that, remember, you're going into the second half of that, and you'll just carry on through the rest just like we did in the first one, and I will meet you back here. So we're coming to the end, and if you remember, we have the two little cramped spaces separated by this. So we're going to go into the first one on this side. And that's it. You should have a total of 32 stitches, double crochets, and now you're going to start going around. So if we remember, we're working in the top of this previous double crochet stitch. And you will go all the way around and come back and join. If you want to put your stitch marker, join right here and ending right here. So remember, you're not going to go into this stitch because we've already went into it. So you'll come back around here, last stitch, join to here, and you'll just repeat like we did with the first basket, and you're going to go up for 6 total rounds, and I will meet you back. Okay, so now that we've finished these 6 rounds, we're going to start on the last round, which is the spaced stitches. So to do that, we're going to chain 3, that's going to count as your first stitch. Now chain 1 more, so that's your space stitch. So you should have a total of 4 chains on your hook. Yarn over, skip this one because that's your first post, skip this next one, and go into the third. Chain 1, skip a stitch, go into the next. Chain 1, skip a stitch, go into the next. So you're going to do this all the way around, and I will meet you back at the end. So we're at the end now, and you can see that we have 2 stitches left right before our chain 3 post. What we're going to do is chain 1, you're going to skip that stitch, and you're just going to go into the one next to it. You're going to chain 1, and you're going to join into that top chain of that chain 3 post. You're going to pull snug. So you can see that even though we don't have a chain space between it, it still leaves a good gap. So here's where we're going to cut off. So now I'm going to show you how to do the single crochet row for the medium basket, because the way the stick is going in the back will be a little different due to these different stitch count of the medium basket. So what we're going to do is you have your post where you joined. You're going to go to that post in front of it, and that the top stitch of this post is going to count as 1. The chain space 2, top stitch of the next post 3, chain space 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and you're going to count all the way around to 43, and you should land on the top stitch of a post. Put your stitch marker in there, because since the stitch count is a little different on the medium basket, the way we're putting the stick in the back is a little different, to where you're going to go through the space between your final post and then this post. And instead of just going in front of one like we did with the big basket, we're going to go in front of two. And you're going to go behind two, in front of two, behind two, in front, behind, in front, behind. And the last two should be where you're ending on that chain 3 space, so that your last single crochet stitch is on the post in front of it, and it will give it a very even look. So do your single crochet just like we did, just like we started and ended with the big basket. Okay, so to do the third basket, which is the smallest one, you're going to do just the same thing that we did for the first and second. Your chain 3, 5 double crochets, making it 6, and you're going to do 5 increase rows. So just like we did with the first basket, go back, and if you need to rewatch how to do those, we're only going up to 5 increase rows. And when you're done with that, we'll come back and show you how to do the rest. Okay, so for the small basket, I went ahead and did the back row and to the very last stitch, which should leave you with 20 double crochets for the back row. So now we turn, and as we did with the other 2 baskets, we are going into the top stitch of that previous double crochet. And continue around and join and continue, and we will do 3 total rounds for the small basket. I'll meet you back when we're done. So now we move to our small basket where we have built up those 3 rounds. Now we're going to work 2 rounds of the spaced stitches. So to do that, so you chain 3, that counts as your first stitch, your first post, then chain 1 more, so you should have 4 chains. Now yarn over. You're not going into that first one because that counts as our first one, so you're skipping and going into that next one. Chain 1, skip, go into next. And you will do that all the way around, and I will meet you at the end. Okay, so we're at the end of this round, and again, we have 2 stitches left. So you're going to chain 1, go in, skip, and go into that next stitch. Then chain 1 and join that 3rd chain in that chain 3 post and pull tight. So there you have it. Now to do the next row, going to chain 3, counts as your first post, chain 1 more, and you are actually going to go into this first chain space. Chain 1, go into the next. Chain 1, go into the next space. And do that all the way around, and I'll meet you at the end. So we're at the end now, and we have 1 space left. We're not actually going to go into that. What we're going to do is chain 1, and we're going to go ahead and join into that 3rd stitch from the chain 3 post. Pull snug and go ahead and cut off. So it gives it a little bit more of an even look. Now to do our single crochet row, here's how we're going to do it. It's pretty much just like we did the medium basket actually. You're going to, there's your chain 3 post. You're going to go to the post in front of it and count that as 1. And then the chain space 2. Top of the post 3, then 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and you're going to go all the way to 29, and you should end on the top of a post stitch. And when we put our stick in here, you're going to go in between the first post there where your stitch marker is, and go in front of 2 posts, then behind 2, in front of 2, behind 2, and you will be going in front of those last 2, which should be your joined chain 3 stitch. So again, it will give you an even single crochet row. So go ahead and do that, and I'll meet you back. Okay, so now that we're done with the small basket and we have all of the baskets made, we're going to want to make our chain to hold the sticks and ultimately hold the baskets. So you're going to do a slip knot, and you're going to chain 3. You're going to go into the back loop of that first chain, yarn over and pull through, pull up some, and then slip stitch. And that will give you your space for the pole to go through. Now you're going to chain up 25. I'll meet you at the end of this 25. Okay, so now that you have 25, you're going to chain 3. You're going to go into that, count down to chain 3, and go into that back loop. Pull through and slip stitch. So that gives you your next hole. And you want them to be kind of snug because you don't really want them slipping and sliding, ultimately making your basket fall over. So now you're going to chain up 20. And I'll meet you back. Okay, when you have your 20, you're going to chain 3, count back into 3 chains, and go into that back loop of the 3rd one. Yarn over and slip stitch. Now you're going to chain 40. Okay, now that we have our 40, we're going to chain 3, go into that 3rd chain, and slip stitch. Now chain 20. Now that you have your 20, chain 3, go into that 3rd chain, slip stitch. Now end with 25. So now that you have your final 25, do a chain 3, go into that 3rd chain, slip stitch. Don't pull too snug, but here's where you will cut off, pull that snug. So now we will assemble everything. Okay, so now that we have everything done, this is a good time to go and sew and glue in all of your ends on the baskets, and now we will assemble the chain to the baskets. So your large basket starting, that bottom loop, maybe a little tight, You just get it on there, and then we'll go in with the other side. Get that on there. And then the medium basket. So you'll kind of see where you have the straight edge in the back and kind of a bump in the front. I like to put the bump in the front. And then the other side. And then the small basket. And it's just like that. And now that you have everything assembled, you're ready to hang your fruit basket. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Thank you for watching.